All right, I want to show you how to do the Grumpy Flower today. And with that assignment, you can see here that I just did kind of a demo Grumpy Flower using some of the tools that we have here on the side. The purpose of this assignment is to get you with a good understanding of kind of how some of these basic tools here work over here on the side. Looking at our module today, if you go into the graphic arts section, under modules, you can see that here's the Grumpy Flower tutorial and the assignment. So if we take a look at the Grumpy Flower tutorial, I want to point out a couple things in here um, so that you know what to kind of watch for some of the stuff. So here is the directions, the step-by-step directions. You can see here, the petals of the flower and the face and so forth. And taking a look at some of the procedural stuff, it kind of walks you through the process of working with Adobe Illustrator and going through and learning how to use some of the basic functions. This particular tutorial was from, I think, CS2 or CS5, one of the earlier editions. And you can see that when we start looking at some of the menu options that they put in the tutorial here, you're going to find that this is going to look different when you start up new. And that's one of the reasons I want to go through and show you a couple of the changes here from the original stuff here. But for the most part, most of the stuff that we look at, like getting to the ellipse tool from our shapes tool here, that is pretty much the same. Um, Setting up the colors is pretty much the same. You'll find a lot of these things that pop up now pop up on the right hand side of the screen versus on the top where it used to be. Um, One of the other key issues that we ran into is when you start looking at the process of going through and way down here where it says making the flower grumpy. In other words, drawing the face on, it points down to using the pencil tool, which is a great tool, but it no longer exists on our software. So I'm assuming that when we changed from CS5 to Creative Cloud 2018, we went from local installation to using the cloud. You'll find that some of the stuff on the toolbar is still the same, and some of it has changed, and the pencil is no longer here. So we've got a change in here where I tell students this is what they're telling you to look for is a pencil tool. The paintbrush right next to that is a good option to use because that lets you do freehand work versus the pen tool, which still uses um, the points to work off of. So again, we're looking at drawing that face here, and instead of using a pencil tool, use a paintbrush that works real well. You can use the pen curve tool as well. There's a couple of different options that you can work through. And the same thing with the stem, for putting the stem on and so forth. Again, use the paintbrush for that, works real well and walks you through saving the file. So let's take a look at Adobe Illustrator. And again, this is the demo that I've done earlier. I'll walk you through the process here all over again. Um, what you can see doesn't exactly look like what was in there. I thought hairdo and all the pedestals and then having a little bit of the accent to different shape and the different color gave it some, I don't know, livelihood, maybe some attitude. Um, but let's walk through this process and go through this all over again. So when you get into Adobe Illustrator, again, we used our print templates and we'll use the letter template here. Title it. So we're going to highlight that. We'll call it Grumpy Flower 2. You can put your name on there. Um, Again, we'll change from points to inches. And we do that because you understand the rulers better. But you can see that our page size is a standard page. Orientation, we'll leave it at portrait versus landscape. We only need one artboard. The other thing it tells you to be able to do here is down under colors. By default, it's CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Those are print colors. But it tells you, in this case, to use RBG, red, green, blue, which are more like monitor colors. But that's the only difference that we have in there. That's fine. I mean, either of them really works. Um, but we'll go through the process here. And where did my artboard go? That looks good. Let's go back and create. There's my artboard. I'm not sure why we had those issues. All right, so at this point, we're going to go through and start using some of our tools. Let's look at the center of the flower here, in the middle. Again, we have the ellipse tool up over here. If we click on that, normally you're going to see it appear like this. You're going to see the rectangle rule up as a standard when it opens. But if you just hit that little down button, the flyout button here, go to the ellipse tool. Um, when we start looking at creating the ellipse, you can see that as I'm pulling and dragging this, I'm just going to create what I think is a pretty good size. It looks pretty round, but if I want this exactly round, right over here in the properties, we want to go ahead and set the width and the height to be exactly the same. Let's make this 4 inches. And you can see that we've got this at 4 inches. You can see right here, oh, it didn't quite maintain. It looks like it maintained both of them. Let's go ahead and not maintain that. Let's change that to 4. Try that one more time here. There we go. So it's maintaining that for some reason. Anyways, that's close enough. We'll go ahead and then set that up in the middle of our page. And again, this dot that's darkened here transforms or sets up to the reference point there. So if I want a reference point or reference off the corner of my object, I can change my reference point by clicking here, and now it's going to reference right here. So the coordinates here tied to a specific spot. And again, it by default, it gives the center, which works fine. At this point, we're looking good. Oh, I just cancel that. We're going to go ahead and let's see here. Select off the screen here. Looks like we're pretty good. Let's go ahead and create some petals. So again, you can use that. Again, there's other things you could use. You could probably have some starred petals. But we're looking at using something in the realm of some type of shape. And again, we're still using the ellipse tool. So again, in the directions, it says make these petals 2 by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull and draw my ellipse. And you can see that right now, we're at just over 1, and I'm going to go ahead and make this 2. So 2 by 2, you can see that there's my 1 round petal. I can kind of move that in to kind of have some of the petals sticking out. My plan is to put these behind that circle, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes here. So I'm kind of placing this position kind of where I want it. Now, if you want to go ahead and place this at right around 90 degrees, you can do that. That's fine. But this will, as we decorate or move around the outside, it'll use that same shape or angle. So again, I'm going to just move this up just a hair, up off of, I think, where kind of the ear, so to speak, is in the face. That's how I accented it last time. The fill option here, we look at filling this. You can see when I clicked on the square there, it's saying, what do you want to fill it with? You can select a color here. You've got a color guide here. There's a couple different options. I can say, hey, let's make this red, and you can see it makes it nice and red. So you can change your colors however you want. And that looks pretty good. We'll kind of leave that where it is. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll deselect that. At this point here, I could take this and then move it all, duplicate it all the way around, which is an easy way of doing this. So if we want to do that, if we select the circle, I can go ahead and go up to the objects and, go to edit, and I'm going to copy it. And this is just a simple copy paste function. And then I can go ahead and edit and go to paste. And it says paste in front, paste in back, paste in place. We want it all at the same level. So I'm going to go just paste. At this point, it gives me another spot. I can go ahead and take that and kind of overlap and move those around. And again, you can decorate your face however you want as a part of this process. So there again, I'm just duplicating. If you want different shapes, you can use any of the stuff to create the other petals. So I'm going to go back to the ellipse tool and I'm going to create a different shaped ellipse. Let's go ahead and make this a little more of a oval shape here. And again, on the fill color, let's change that fill color to something a little bit different. So there's a little different effect. Let's go ahead and just kind of park this and move this in place. I'm going to go ahead and undo that ellipse. There we go. So if I want to use this all the way around, here's one of the things we have to watch for. If I want to do a copy and paste, if I select this and go Control C for copy and Control V for paste, you can see it gives me the same shape, the same angle as what I had before. So I can put another one there. But if I want to go ahead now and go Control V, it's going to continue to give me the same orientation. Now, I can rotate and move this by grabbing the corner of the square, or you can go use the rotate command. However you want to do that. But it's kind of a fun way going through the process and creating some of these petals that you'd find around the flower. Again, we're just going to go ahead and kind of decorate this up. And again, we're going to just get that little arc in here. There we go. We probably need one right there. And then you can see right here, we've got the one. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take this one here and actually delete it. I'm going to fill it with another petal. Kind of show you that accent that we kind of figured out. So again, as we're decorating around here, you can see this is a pretty easy process to do. You can use the rotate command to rotate these, which is up here under objects. And the concern or issue with that is if I select and let's say click on this one and rotate it up here, let's see, there we go. If I go to rotate there, it's asking me for specific or standard angle. And when I'm looking at that particular angle here, it's hard to get that angle exactly the way I want it. It's like right here, it says 90 degrees. Now it's putting 90 degrees to the box. And it's hard to get that in the exact uh, transformed area. And I think it's just easier just by rotating and eyeballing it by hand. So that's one of the things I want to just kind of make sure that you understood is there's another option. There we go. And I'm just turning it, knowing that I'm going to place it maybe right over here. And again, they're petals, so how are they arranged and so forth? It's kind of hard to say. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring this one forward in front of the other two, kind of like an accent flower, so to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my objects and then arrange. I can bring that one forward in front of the other two. Looks like we need to bring it forward again. Maybe bring the front. There we go. So now that looks it's like it's kind of sticking out of there. We could put another pedal behind here to take it kind of look at that realm. Now this gives me the look of I've got hair in front of or on top of my face. So again, we can kind of park and move some stuff around here to kind of open up that face area. But my plan is to put the petals here behind the circle. So again, the face is going to be here, and let's move it all back. So to change that, if I take this circle here, I'm going to color this in. So let's fill this first. Let's fill it with maybe an orange color. That looks pretty nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab that object and again go back to my arrangements and bring this all the way to the front. And by doing so, now the face is completely open here. And you can see we've got the accent there. The other thing is again, we can go ahead and shift and move some of the stuff around. Please note that when we do those things, we're just changing where these shapes are oriented behind here. If we laser cut this or want to vinyl cut this, the oval path that's hidden behind here will still cut. So you have to be very careful when you do these processes to understand my end result in this case is to use the software. But if I'm doing a laser cutting process or a vinyl cutting process, you're going to have to do some editing here so those shapes that are behind here are not going to come through and be cut. So there's the flowers. Let's do one more. Um, I'm going to put one more petal down here. So I'm going to again orient it to make it look kind of where I want it. And again, that one, because I did it later on than my movement to this forward, it's saying, hey, here, this is my top layer. So understand this also kind of works in layers. So again, we can take that object and then send it backwards. And you can see by sending it backwards, now it's parked behind the face or head, and you can arrange that. So just make some kind of petal process. Let's start on the face next. Now over here in the directions, it was saying use the pencil tool, but you take a look through here, it doesn't really have a pencil tool, from what it said. The paintbrush is a good option. And I can go in here and kind of make a nose. And I can also go through and I now for making the eyes, I went through and actually made a couple of small black eyeballs. So there is that. I'm going to go ahead and fill that black, and I'm going to go ahead and move that into place. Oop, there we go. And again, you can resize it. If it looks a little small, resize it. Once you got it the size you want, go Control C and copy it, and Control V and make another eyeball. Versus, and you can make them two different eyeballs. That's fine. So there's the eyeballs. Oop, I'll cancel that. And select tool, we'll cancel that. Now those look pretty good. The placement looks good. The nice thing is we can move stuff around. If you don't like the nose, you can change the nose. And then for creating, again, the eyebrows, and again, we're going to kind of point them down to make kind of an unhappy face. And again, because they're not perfect, they give you more of that frown look, which is really nice. And then down here on the mouth, we can also use that as well. So, and again, if you don't like that position or you don't like that particular object, you can again adjust how you want that to look. Oop, there we go. And we could use the pen tool for that as well. And you can see that there's kind of an angry look, but not too bad. And then for bringing this down, the other thing is if you want a bigger look, right now this is at a 1 point, I can come over here and change that stroke size. Let's make it 5. And you can see that 5 gives it a big, uh, thick lip, so to speak. So you can play and change around a little bit, those different options. 3 looks a little bit better, I think. Maybe let's bring this to 2, make it a little thicker. That's fine. And again, you can make this however you'd like. The next part or last part here is to put the stem in. Again, we're going to use that paintbrush tool again. We're going to start it right about here. And we're just going to go ahead and create that stem. And you can see that it kind of flattens it out. You can make it perfectly straight if you wanted to. I think more curves the better. The other thing with that is when we take a look at this again, we can change that stroke color to some kind of a green. And so you can look at the way it looks now. There's my green. And then the petals for doing, the leaves down here now, the leaves aren't a requirement, but they look kind of cool. Again, I'm using the paintbrush tool. And I'm going to go Control Plus on the keyboard so I can zoom in. I can look down here and say, okay, I'm going to put petals in. Again, we're completing this. You can see it kind of came back to sharpen that up. And again, these are the lines. If I don't want that line to be 2, I can go ahead and change that back here to 0.1 or 0.75. You can thin those out. The other thing is the stroke color doesn't have to necessarily be green on the petals. We can accent it with, let's say, a black. Same thing here. We can change that point size for the stroke to be thinner, the color again to be black, and now that looks a little bit different. Or if you just want to use, green, that's fine. But you can see we have some completed objects in here now. I can also take and put another stroke in here. Maybe put an edge in that leaf, down the middle of the blade, so to speak. I mean, you can remodel this a lot. And again, we can start looking at fill colors. So I can go ahead and say, I'm going to select that, and I want one leaf here. And let's fill that with light green or an aqua green color. And we can select the other side over here. And again, we can fill that really with any color we want or patterns. You can change patterns as well. And let's go ahead and make this one a little bit darker. So there again, we can make some variation because we have a completed arc and it's captured right in here. We have this area able to fill. If this was open and we didn't have it all the way back to the stem, it wouldn't have recognized this being an area we could fill, and we would have gotten an error saying, hey, you can't fill this. And that's why you have to make sure that those leaves touch. We'll press Control Negative and zoom out. There is my Handy Dandy Grumpy Flower. And again, this one is different than that one I made yesterday. So there can be a lot of different variations depending upon how you want to go ahead and create this. But there's the Grumpy Flower project. And again, it works a lot with the shapes over here and using the fill and stroke colors. And again, as you want to take and adapt something, if you click on it right over here in the properties, it always tells you and gives you the option of changing some of this stuff. For instance, if I don't want this to be dark, let's say we're giving this flower gray hair, we can change that. Let's change it right here in that petal. And the opacity right here, which means how well it's filled or how dark it is, we can change the opacity by any number. If I want to go 50%, you can see what it does is it gives a different color to that. So if it was dark black, so to speak, it would gray it out. So what it did was it grayed out that particular petal. So you can do hopefully have a lot of fun and accenting with this process. And then when you're all done and go to save it, file save will park it, so to speak, back in the computer. We probably want to go through that process though, and I'm going to call it Grumpy 3. But you can see it drops it right here for me in where I want it, and that would be great. For you guys, on your options in here, you want to drop that in your network location, which you could find under this PC. And then versus devices and drives, for you at school, it'll pop up here. It'll say whatever your school network ID spot is. And then down the next one down will say O drive. It'll say apps cache O. And you'll want to drop it in your location here. But due to where I'm at with mine, I'm putting in my Google file stream because that's where I keep all of my stuff from one class to the next. So again, saving that or going using save as, like it popped up in here as save as. That's how we do that. All right, we'll go ahead and save it there. And that flower is done. Right here pops up because it's asking, when I save this, what versions do I want to use? Now we're on Illustrator Creative Cloud, but if you're saving it to transfer it to an older machine or send it to somebody that has an older software program, we can change that in a different option. For instance, like I said, we used to have CS5 before we got Creative Cloud. This tutorial that we're looking at is from CS2. So we can save that in any Illustrator version for what we're doing. Illustrator Creative Cloud is what we want. Just leave everything kind of the way it's set up in here as well, and just hit OK. And now it's saved. So that's how we do the Grumpy Flower project.